AI Limit is an anime-inspired post-apocalyptic Soulslike developed by Sense Games as part of Sony's China Hero project, a PlayStation mentoring and support initiative for Chinese developers. I played through the game 3 consecutive times in over 100 hours, and I can safely say that AI Limit is a top-tier Souls-like. So today, I'm here to talk to you about why I think that is, and to help you decide whether AI Limit is the right Souls-like for you. Like I said, AI Limit has an anime-inspired art style with cel-shaded characters that is somewhat similar to Code Vein. The environments are a mix of classic post-apocalyptic streets and buildings, industrial areas, some with a sci-fi twist, and areas that feel sacred and surreal. AI Limit is generally a bleak-looking game. The world is in shambles and its few remaining inhabitants are not exactly having an easy time staying alive.
This is the last pod. Don't leave anything.
You will spend a lot of time moving through dirty sewers, abandoned factories, and empty subway stations, but then you'll eventually end up in some very bright and colorful places that are the complete opposite of everything you've seen, and this creates a very cool contrast between the game's various locations, which is also relevant to the lore in the game. I like this approach, and I think it sometimes makes you feel as if you're climbing a mountain for hours and all you can see is a giant grey wall. But then you reach the top and you get rewarded with an amazing view. That's AI Limit in a nutshell. Graphically, the game is a bit of a mixed bag. It doesn't look bad, in fact some of its locations are beautiful and the character models and enemy designs actually look very good. But some of the environmental assets look dated and some of the textures are quite blurry, at least in the PS5 version. It's disappointing that the textures on some of the armor sets are also a bit pixelated, as the game doesn't look particularly demanding, but in all fairness, AI Limit is a budget game, and most of that budget went into gameplay and level design, which I'm not gonna complain about. The performance is also a bit mixed. I played the game on PS5 where the game targets 60 FPS, and for the most part, performance is fairly stable. But there are a few random areas in the game where the frame rate drops below 60. Luckily, that doesn't happen very often, and it's never bad enough that it affects your enjoyment of the game or hinders you during combat. But the bottom line is that performance could be better. The story is pretty decent actually, and it does some very interesting things towards the end, but the basic premise of the game is fairly standard for a post-apocalyptic setting, so it's not gonna stand out for its originality. In AI Limit, you play as Arissa, a nascent blader tasked with restoring branches, which are this game's bonfire equivalent, so that she recovers her lost memory. Arissa is a newly born grown-up, so in the first few hours, she has to learn basic things like trading and the importance of having a name.
Why should I have a name?
So, throughout the first hours of the game, she's basically a blank slate, and most of her dialogue consists of repeating words that other characters say.
Seeking branches.
But don't let that put you off, as she does eventually develop a personality. She just needs a bit of time. AI Limit is not a particularly cryptic Souls-like. The storytelling is straightforward in a similar fashion to Lies of P, and the game does a very good job at tying up loose ends before its conclusion. There are plenty of interesting characters to meet, each with their own personality and motivations, and I really like the way their personal stories and the side quests they offer are woven into the main plot.
Hey, big sister over there. Here. Yeah, I'm here.
Even simple stuff as upgrading your Estus flask equivalent is done by finding samples of soil from different areas in the game, then bringing them back to Delpha, a botanist who is trying to find fertile soil so that humans can grow plants again, and who's able to purify the soil, which you can then use to upgrade your healing potions. Some NPCs have a lot to say in this game, and they often engage in long exposition dumps that shed a bit more light on the game's story, so I honestly didn't mind it that much. You also find plenty of logs, journals, and diaries that explain the lore of the game, along with item descriptions for weapons and armor in classic Dark Souls fashion. The lore itself is actually quite interesting, and the more I played and the more things I discovered, the more intrigued I felt. Again, this is not gonna win any awards, but it's interesting enough to keep you coming back for more. The level design and exploration in AI Limit are absolutely fantastic. The game features a huge interconnected world with a few distinct areas that are connected to each other through various transition points like elevators or a subway system in a similar way to Bleak Faith. The main difference is that in AI Limit, the game bounces you between its various locations. So for example, the game starts in the sewer level, then you go out and you explore the city, and later on the game brings you back to an entirely new and different part of the sewer level that you need to go through in order to progress the game. The levels are intricately designed and absolutely filled with useful shortcuts and hidden paths that will lead you to all sorts of discoveries, from gear and upgrade materials to strong new enemies or even bosses that shed a bit more light on the game's lore. There are entire optional areas, quest lines and multiple bosses that you can miss quite easily, but if you're the kind of Souls-like player who never leaves any stone unturned, your efforts will be greatly rewarded with plenty of cool stuff. Another thing I really like is that many of the areas in AI Limit will throw different kinds of environmental hazards at you, ranging from the classic poison swamps to snipers taking shots at you from a vantage point you have to reach, or giant robots trying to blast you with a huge laser beam. And there's even a nice and easy platforming section in the game. All of this stuff, in my opinion, makes AI Limit feel like a love letter to classic Soulsborne game design back when the levels themselves used to be challenging and dangerous, and Souls games were not all about the boss fights. If you're an exploration bro like me, who misses the old school Souls experience, I think you're gonna have a great time exploring the world of AI Limit. Sound design is also very good. The weapons sound good, the parry sound effect is nice and punchy, and the background music does a great job at complementing the game's desolate vibes and thick atmosphere. The soundtrack for the bosses is also good, but it doesn't stand out in any particular way compared to other games, and it's not exactly the kind of music that you'll find yourself humming while you're doing the dishes. And the same goes for his voice acting. It's good, but it just doesn't stand out.
You heard what he said? Is it true?
I think the voice actors in AI Limit sound a bit like your typical anime voice actors, with the main difference being that this game doesn't have a very strong anime vibe, like Code Vein for example. By comparison, Code Vein is a lot more emotional and melodramatic, with people constantly whinging about stuff.
I won't let myself forget again.
But I feel like AI Limit is not really like that. It looks like an anime, and it does have some anime vibes, but it's generally toned down compared to your typical JRPG delivery. Personally, I'm not a big anime guy, I don't watch any anime, but I do like JRPGs and I don't mind anime as an art style. So if you're generally put off by anime games, just know that AI Limit is fairly light on it. Moving on, it's time to talk a bit about gameplay and combat. First of all, the movement in this game feels very smooth and responsive. AI Limit is a game with polished gameplay despite having a smaller budget, and I really appreciate that. It doesn't feel floaty like Lords of the Fallen, janky like Bleak Faith, or slow like Lies of P. It's a game that feels good to play, the movement feels great, and I think that goes a really long way. In AI Limit, there are no classes to choose from at the start of the game, but you do get a choice between 3 starter weapons after you light your first bonfire. A one-handed longsword, a pair of dual blades, and a two-handed greatsword, and obviously each weapon has its own advantages and disadvantages.
So, you have accepted your first mission.
The gameplay is fairly standard for a Souls-like, but the combat in AI Limit feels very Bloodborne inspired. It's fast-paced, a successful parry will open enemies up to a fatal attack, you can dodge roll if you're not locked onto an enemy, and locking on will change it into a dash. You know, like in Bloodborne. In true Souls-like fashion, we have bonfires with respawning enemies, an Estus flask, a Souls-like specific leveling system, doors that you can't open from this side, and genre-specific combat mechanics. But there's also a few key differences. For example, in AI Limit you don't have a stamina bar, and dodging and attacking doesn't cost you anything. Instead, you have a sync bar that goes from 0% to 100% and is divided into 3 or 4 levels that determine how much damage you're dealing with each attack. Whenever you deal damage with regular attacks, your sync bar fills up, while taking damage does the opposite and drains it further. The higher the bracket you're in, the more damage you're gonna deal, but getting your sync bar down to 0% will stagger you for a few seconds. However, while you're still in the lowest bracket, the sync bar fills up on its own, so the game does give you a bit of leeway. Now the tricky part is that while attacking and dodging is free, your spells, weapon skills, blocking and parrying each drain your sync bar. For example, a basic ranged spell costs 20% of your sync bar. A parry attempt, whether successful or not, will cost you 10%. It's an interesting mechanic as it sometimes forces you to choose between stronger physical attacks or getting rid of that annoying ranged enemy that's been sniping you while you're trying to fight the big dude with a stick, with the downside being that your next few attacks will hit like a wet noodle. It's a really interesting mechanic that gives you a bit more freedom of movement while keeping the challenge intact, and I'm happy to see Souls-like developers trying to put their own spin on the existing formula. Another thing that AI Limit handles differently is its death mechanic. You see, when you die in AI Limit, you don't drop your souls and have to go get them back, but instead you permanently lose a percentage of your currently held souls, which is determined by the retention rate of an accessory you have to wear. It's not bad, but it's a bit of a double-edged sword. Just imagine you die with 10,000 souls on you, and then you permanently lose 2,000 souls when you respawn. That's possibly an entire level permanently lost. But I guess it can be useful in some situations where you'd rather cash in on your remaining souls after respawning than risk losing all of your dropped souls on your way to get them back. There is quite a bit of variety in the weapons department, but most of the weapon classes in the game end up feeling pretty much the same when it comes to the basic moveset. Every weapon has a light combo and a single heavy attack that can either be charged into a more powerful one or mixed into your light combos. Every weapon class has a single specific light combo, but the heavy attack sometimes changes. So for example, if there's 6 different dual blades, all 6 of them will have identical light attacks, but maybe 3 of them will have one type of heavy attack and the other 3 will have a different one. As a general rule, I've noticed that lighter weapons tend to have 4 hit combos and heavier ones only have 3. Each weapon also has a unique active skill that can deal a lot of damage, poison your enemies, or even provide temporary elemental buffs for that weapon. The weapon skills are very cool and very useful, and I think they make up for the samey movesets, which to be honest I don't personally mind that much. I'm not expecting Elden Ring levels of variety from this game, and I generally stick to only a few weapons in Souls games, so picking up a stronger weapon that has the same moveset as my current one is not really an issue for me. But I do know that some people care about this, so I wanted to give you a heads up. AI Limit also features a magic system that lets you equip and use one spell at a time. The game doesn't have a ton of spells, but the ones it has are great across the board, so I think the build variety is good. But I would have liked to see a more robust magic system, because the high sync bar cost of the more advanced spells makes it hard to play the game as a dedicated spellcaster, even if the stats in the game allow you to build for it specifically. You probably noticed that Orisa has an odd looking gauntlet on her left arm, which is one of the most important things in the game. Basically, your gauntlet has 4 unlockable skills, 2 of which are blocking and parrying. The way it works in this game is that you can only have one function of the gauntlet active at a time, so you have to choose between blocking or parrying. But you can switch between them as you please. The shield mode can only block and will continuously drain your sync bar while you're holding down the block button, with an added cost per blocked hit. But blocking charges up your shield with this purple energy, which you can unleash from time to time by double tapping the block button. Parrying costs 10% of your sync bar every single time you press the parry button, whether that leads to a successful parry or not. But if you do land a successful parry, that usually gives you a free fatal attack, which fills up a good chunk of your sync bar. What's different about parrying in this game is that the parry animation has about a half-second long wind-up, so compared to games like Sekiro, Kazan or Lies of P, where you block on impact, in AI Limit you have to anticipate the attacks and launch the parry before the enemy's attack lands, similar to how it works in Dark Souls or Bloodborne. This is not a perfect block with a posture bar, this is a classic high risk, high reward parry mechanic that can deal a lot of damage to your enemies or get you killed in a few seconds. And I think that's what makes it so satisfying to pull off. You can also backstab enemies, but only when they're unaware of your presence. You can't circle around enemies in combat and get a free backstab, which I think is a smart choice, because I've often felt like that approach kind of trivializes certain fights in the older Souls games. In terms of difficulty, AI Limit is pretty standard for a Souls-like game, which doesn't mean anything because Souls-likes don't really have a standard difficulty. But what I'm trying to say is that the challenge is fairly average. It's not too hard, it's not too easy. I know that many people online have tried branding AI Limit as an easy Souls-like, but I beg to differ. I think AI Limit is not as challenging as Kazan, Neo, or the final stretch of Lies of P, but it's also not as easy as Bleak Faith, Steel Rising, Mortal, Shell, or Lords of the Fallen 2023. There are parts of the game that are quite challenging, and you'll have to lock in for a few bosses late into the game. But there are a few bosses, particularly in the first half of the game, that are very easy to beat, and some of its weaker enemies get stun locked quite easily. Personally, I've been playing Soulsborne and Souls-like games since their inception, and I would definitely not describe AI Limit as an easy game, especially for people who are new to the genre. There's plenty of different enemies to fight in the game, each with their own unique attacks and behaviors. The animations are very well done, the hitboxes are good, and some of the spectacle bosses you fight will force you to adopt different playstyles depending on their moveset. AI Limit is the kind of game where losing feels fair, and you always know exactly what you did wrong. Sure, there are bullshit deaths every now and again, but generally speaking, dying in AI Limit is a learning experience that will help you improve constantly. AI Limit is a great game and a top tier Souls-like, and it's probably one of the first few Souls-like that managed to nail both the feel of the combat and the level design and exploration. The combat feels very good, the bosses are well designed, the movement feels fluid and responsive, it has a good enough story with interesting characters, beautiful art, great atmosphere, and the level design and exploration are some of the best in the genre. It's not a perfect game by any means, and the graphics could be improved, the weapon variety could be improved, and it would definitely benefit from a more robust magic system. But this is a game that was developed on a much tighter budget than some of the best Souls-likes, and I would argue that AI Limit doesn't only match the level of quality in those games, but in some areas it actually surpasses it. So I'm really excited for the upcoming DLC, as one of my few problems with AI Limit is that there isn't more of it. AI Limit gets an 8 out of 10 from yours truly, and I recommend it to anyone who's looking for a more old school approach to Souls-like game design. If you're looking for a game that doesn't neglect combat or exploration, AI Limit might be right up your alley. But if you're looking for a linear experience with short and easy levels and extra tough boss fights, you might be a bit disappointed. But this is all I have to say about AI Limit. I hope this review sheds a bit of light on what the game is actually like, and I hope this helps you decide whether AI Limit is the right Souls-like for you personally. If you enjoyed this video, please defeat that like button and subscribe to my channel for more reviews and gaming content. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.